All right, guys, I want to talk about kind of the angle of the hand or hand placement in downward facing dog. The same thing can be used for chaturanga, for plank, crow, handstand, or even in wheel. Just adjusting your hands can help you find a lot more comfort in your shoulders and a little bit more space in your upper back to make downward facing dog and any of these other poses a little more comfortable, especially on the wrist as well. So normally, right, shoulder width distance or a little bit wider is how it's taught, and that's a great piece of advice to take. But it's more about just finding what's more comfortable for you, hand width. And then the angle of the hand, what a lot of teachers teach and what I see quite a bit in my students is their pointer fingers are straight forward, or they're talking about let's get our wrist creases parallel to the top of our mat. Now, as a ballpark figure, that's pretty good. That's not bad. But if you practice with me, you know I'm about making it even better or even more comfort in a lot of these poses, and it's just a minor tweak. So instead of taking your pointer finger straight forward here, what I like to recommend to most people is just slightly turning their hands out so more of the webbing between the thumb and the pointer finger is facing forward. And so that degree of webbing facing forward is kind of, you can play around with it. So as I set up the same way, hands about shoulder width distance, right underneath the shoulders, or maybe a little bit wider. And for me, I'm just going to turn my fingers out. And I like to turn my fingers out and imagine my hands are like on a clock. And my pointer finger is going at 1 o'clock on my right hand. My left pointer finger is going at 11. But again, it can be a slighter turnout. It can be a little bit less. But just play with it, right? Wrist parallel to the mat, right? It's kind of more of a neutral position in the shoulders. As I start to turn my hands out, I'm creating more external rotation in the shoulder. For most bodies, they're going to find that more external rotation more comfortable in these load-bearing poses. Now, if you have a lot of shoulder mobility, that might be too much external rotation. The biggest thing we're looking for is when we move the hand or we adjust where we're placing our hands is we don't have any discomfort or any pinching to the inside of our shoulder or the front inside of our shoulder. So for this downward facing dog, I take my pointer fingers at 1 o'clock on my right hand, my pointer finger at 11 o'clock on my left hand. But again, the degree of the turnout is just play around with that and see what's more comfortable. And then I just press back into my downward facing dog. And for me, this gives me more external rotation in the shoulders, just enough to make it more comfortable. If I was to turn my hands out even more, I'm giving myself more external rotation. Which, if I turn my hands out this much, I'm starting to get some discomfort on the inside here, so that's too much. So I'm going to rotate my pointer fingers back at 1 and 11 o'clock. And I come into it. What you see, especially in men, is when their wrists are parallel to the top or their pointer fingers are kind of facing forward, is their shoulders are tight, right? We have a little bit more bulky of shoulders. So just that kind of neutral position here just isn't enough to find comfort. So just by turning the hands out. So if you see a guy that's kind of here, right? Getting him to kind of turn his fingers out just a little bit allows him to straighten his arms a little bit more, which makes this pose more comfortable. Because this here is just, it's painful. It's not painful. It's just really hard to hold, right? It's uncomfortable. So turning out and just trying to get them to get a little bit more external rotation in the hands, pressing back, downward facing dog. Same thing for plank, right? Little turnout can be a lot more comfortable for a lot of people, so play with it. Again, that degree of play out is going to be dependent on how much external rotation your shoulders are going to need. Right? Same thing with chaturanga, hands can be here. If I'm taking crow pose, I take my crow pose with my fingers turned out a little bit, right? A little bit more external rotation for the shoulders. It's just a more comfort, more space up here for me. Now, another thing that can help with shoulders and making the downward facing dog, planks, all that more comfortable or more powerful or just more stable is when you're in your downward facing dog, right? Once you get your hand placement down and you make yourself back into downward facing dog, is to play around with pulling the thumbs towards each other. And you can see as I start to pull the thumbs towards each other, my elbow crease wraps more towards my thumb. It's giving me more external rotation in the shoulder, which again, for most bodies, that's going to feel pretty nice. If you're one of those people that have the mobility in the shoulders or for whatever reason more external rotation just doesn't work for you, as you pull the thumbs towards each other, you may start to feel discomfort front side, inside of the shoulder, right? We don't want that. So for you, what I'd recommend, right, again, placing the hands however you want to place them, whatever's comfortable for you, and then from here, instead of pulling the thumbs and creating more external rotation, Press into your hands and then pull your hands away. And you can start to see my elbow creases now start to turn a little bit towards the back of the room. And it gives you a slight internal rotation to the shoulder, or the action of an internal rotation, because we're still going to be sort of in an external rotation with just where the hands are placed, but just a slight action of internally rotating the shoulder. So rolling the elbow creases back towards the feet, right? To take this discomfort here, and you may find more stability with just a little bit less external rotation. Biggest piece of advice, play with it. It's not concrete. My wrists don't have to be parallel to the top. My pointer finger doesn't have to be facing forward. My hands don't have to turn out. They don't have to maybe turn out just a little bit. Maybe they turn out a lot. Play with it. Find what works into your body. Notice what happens when you pull your thumbs towards each other. If that feels pretty good in the shoulders and you feel more stable, stay with it. If it doesn't, pull your hands away from each other. If neither one of those work, go back to how you were doing it if you found more comfort. Okay? But the biggest thing is, don't get so caught up on the alignment cues if it doesn't work for your body. Yoga should feel good. It shouldn't feel painful. If you feel pain, we should do something different, right? Give it a go. Let me know how you think, right? Wrist feel perfectly fine facing forward. Experiment. What does it feel like when you turn it out? If that doesn't feel good, go back to normal. When you find your hand placement that feels good, experiment what happens when you pull your thumbs towards each other, right? Creating more external rotation in the shoulder. If that feels good, keep it. If it doesn't, pull the hands away from each other. If that doesn't feel good, go back to normal, right? The biggest thing is you shouldn't have pain. Yoga should feel good. Let me know what you think.